Welcome to another episode of our video series of the mechanics of human cognition.
It's good to be back. We've got a pretty heavy topic today, but one that feels incredibly necessary.
We really do. I mean, you just have to look at the headlines these last few years. The sheer scale of the financial fraud, the ethical collapses in major institutions, this constant drumbeat about, hawk yam people taking what isn't theirs, accumulating these huge unfair gains. It really makes you ask some big questions about it.
It throws you right back to that fundamental question, doesn't it? Are we, as a species, fundamentally good? Or is that darker side, our default setting?
Exactly. And today, we want to look at that not just through philosophy, but through evolutionary biology, through cognitive science.
And through the pressures of the systems we've built around ourselves.
Right. The mission today is to really analyze the factory settings of the human animal. What are the primal drivers behind these massive ethical failures?
And how do our systems, economic, political, either put a brake on our worst impulses or, just hit the accelerator?
So to start, I think we have to set the context. This idea of good and evil as these fixed absolute things, it's a bit of a trap.
It's a huge trap. The reality is that morality is profoundly situational. It's contextual.
The classic example, right? Killing is evil, full stop. But in a war.
In a war, it suddenly becomes a necessity. It can even be seen as a good if it leads to victory. The action is the same, but the context, the entire environment has changed its meaning.
So a simple rule book just doesn't work.
No, which is why I prefer a more a biocentric definition. Let's say good is anything that supports the diversity, the vitality, and the beauty of life.
And evil is anything that obstructs that.
Precisely. Anything that causes undue stress, blocks access to resources, diminishes another's existence just for your own gain. It's an obstruction of that flow of life.
Okay, so if we accept that, then to get rid of the obstruction, we have to find its source.
Right. And when we see something like a massive fraud, the person who gets caught, who goes to jail, they're usually just the last stop.
The symptom, not the disease itself.
Exactly. Their behavior was triggered. It was triggered by incredible systemic pressures or a toxic environment or this feeling of just absolute necessity, a compulsion.
We even see this down to the hardware, down to the neurology. It's pretty well documented that some individuals who commit these truly psychopathic acts, they have measurable physiological differences.
In the prefrontal cortex, yeah. It affects empathy, impulse control.
And that's not to excuse the behavior, of course not, but it proves that context, in this case biological context, is hugely important.
The hardware matters. And if we zoom out from the biological context to the social one, you see what might be the biggest driver of unethical behavior today.
Economic anxiety.
It's everywhere. This pervasive feeling that we're always on the edge of a cliff, a sense that society is, sinking and rising at the same time.
It's a constant hum, isn't it?
Yeah.
Even for people who seem affluent on the outside, there's this underlying uncertainty.
And that environment is the perfect breeding ground for shortcuts, for fraud, for taking unfair advantage. It's a defense mechanism against a story of scarcity.
Which is a perfect segue into our evolutionary mechanics. We always have to remember, Darwinian survival isn't survival of the strongest.
No, it's survival of the most adaptive.
So that raises a huge question. If being purely selfish, purely egoistic, gives you an immediate advantage, why did evolution bother with things like a conscience? Why did pro-social behaviors ever develop?
Well, this is where evolutionary simulations have given us some incredible insights. Biologists run these AI-supported virtual communities.
Right, for thousands and thousands of generations.
And they test different strategies, and what they found is, well, it's pretty counterintuitive.
What happens when you have a world of only selfish actors?
It collapses.
Yeah.
Very quickly. They can't form the social bonds they need to survive. They just tear each other apart for resources.
Okay, that makes sense. But what about the opposite? A world that's 100% altruistic.
That collapses even faster.
Wait, really? Why would a perfectly selfless society fail? Shouldn't it be the strongest?
You'd think so, but no. First, they can't manage resources effectively. Nobody is being assertive enough to secure or grow what the group needs. But the bigger problem is, they have no defenses.
Ah, so they're vulnerable.
Completely. A 100% altruistic community is the perfect target for one small, ruthlessly selfish group to just come in and take everything. The free rider problem on a catastrophic scale.
So pure cooperation. It lacks the competitive drive needed to protect itself.
Precisely. The only systems that lasted, the healthiest ones, had a specific ratio. They needed a large majority of cooperative, pro-social individuals, but they also needed a small fraction, always less than a third, of competitive, self-interested actors.
So what we call good and bad, they're both necessary parts of a stable system. It's the balance, the ratio that matters.
The ratio is everything. And that brings us to the human machine itself, our wiring.
Let's talk physiology for a minute. Just look at our faces. Why are our eyes right here in the front?
Binocular vision, depth perception.
Right. It gives us this narrow, focused view. Not like a horse or a deer with eyes on the side of their head.
They need to scan for threats. We need to track a target. We're hunters. We are predatory organisms. That is our biological heritage.
And that hunter physiology.
Yeah.
What does that do to our modern brain sitting in an office?
It makes us high-strung. We run hot.
Yeah.
When we feel threatened. And today that means a deadline, financial stress, social competition, our stress hormones spike.
Testosterone, adrenaline, cortisol.
And that cocktail makes you anxious, irritable, hypersensitive. We are, deep down, a relentless hunter wearing a business suit.
And that hunter's logic is what dictates our relationship with resources.
Think about it. In a hunter-gatherer world, resources are completely uncertain. You don't know when the next meal is coming, so when you find something...
You take it all right now.
Yeah.
You have to.
It's the only logical move. That's
Yeah.
the biological default. And you can see that logic playing out perfectly in modern financial scams.
That desire to double your money overnight.
Yes, that impulse, that belief that you should be able to put 1 unit of value in and get 5 units back instantly, that is the hunter-gatherer mindset. It's the Delongerich, the fraudster mindset.
It's the search for effortless gain.
Which is the opposite of genuine value creation. I mean, you listen to any actual financial expert, someone who builds real, lasting wealth. What do they talk
It's
about?
all slow, gradual, compounding returns.
Based on tangible value. Anyone promising to skip that process to 2 times your money in a week is just tapping into that deep, primal, fraudulent impulse.
It's the moment we stop trying to create value and only focus on capturing it.
That's when the predatory system takes over. And this leads directly to how we build our societies, the danger of our models.
Right. Humans have this incredible tendency to create a system, an ideology, an economic theory, whatever, and then start to worship the model itself.
And they completely forget the nature of the creatures the model is supposed to govern.
Look at something like pure 20th century communism. A beautiful idea on paper.
Absolutely. But it totally ignored the fact that humans are acquisitive, competitive, status-seeking animals. And the result?
The powerful elite, the Politburo, hoarded everything, and the system collapsed into manufactured scarcity.
Then you look at the other extreme, pure, unrestricted capitalism. As one of our sources put it, unrestricted growth is a lot like cancer.
It has to expand or it dies.
Regardless of what that does to the host. Which is why capitalist societies had to borrow ideas from their critics, from Marxism, even things like social safety nets, just to keep from self-destructing.
So no single system is the answer.
None. And the great warning here is that any system, even one we hold as sacred as democracy, can produce absolute evil if the population is uninformed or ideologically radicalized.
It's terrifying to think about. But the worst human atrocities, the biggest historical disasters.
They weren't committed by people who woke up and said, I'm gonna do evil today.
No, they were committed by people who were absolutely unshakably convinced they were serving a higher, noble cause.
That is the ultimate danger, categorization. The second you divide the world into an in-group, my comrades, my co-religionists, and decide they are inherently better than the out-group.
You've just licensed conflict. And no system can survive that on a global scale.
Which means, ultimately, the real work is internal. It has to be. This is where someone like Carl Jung and his idea of the shadow side becomes so critical.
That dark, difficult part of ourselves that we try to pretend isn't there.
We have to meet it. We aren't born a Jedi or a Sith, you know? We're shaped by our environment, and we have to choose which of those internal drives we're going to feed.
The struggle to control that shadow is what maturity is all about.
Yeah.
You see the opposite in our historical cruelty to animals.
For centuries, just horrifying experiments, ritual abuse, and it was all justified by a completely flawed model.
The idea that animals couldn't feel pain, that they didn't have souls or consciousness.
A delusion held by some of the most respected scientists of their time. Today we know that's nonsense. They have rich inner lives, they feel trauma. That cruelty was born from a fundamental lack of awareness.
And that awareness is what separates us.
It is our unique power. We are the only creature, as far as we know, that can transcend its animal nature. We're the only animal that can look at its own behavior and say, I did that wrong, I will change.
That capacity for conscious transformation is everything.
And it comes down to a choice of pleasures.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if we give in to our low animalistic pleasures, the easy dopamine hits, the effortless game, the shortcuts, we can become more destructive than any animal. We fall to a level, Havandanasha, lower than the animal.
But there's another path.
There is. If we seek out the high pleasures art, music like Bach, or, say, philosophy, great literature, we demonstrate our potential to become something more, superior to angels even, who can only obey. We can choose.
So the whole struggle is just recognizing that hunter inside and consciously choosing to put it under the control of that higher mind.
It's a lifetime of work. It requires constant self-awareness, asking why. Why do I want that shortcut? And then choosing the harder, more sustainable path.
So what we've really laid out is that our nature is this dualistic contextual thing.
Yeah.
And being a good person, being ethical, isn't a default state. It requires constant work against these huge systemic and evolutionary headwinds.
Constant, conscious work. And if you want a final, really practical way to start exercising that unique human muscle for transformation, just listen to your own language.
How so?
Research is very clear on this. Habitual negative language, even minor daily cursing, constant complaining, it literally changes your brain chemistry. It measurably increases your risk for depression and stress.
So just by changing how you talk.
Just by consciously shifting your internal and external language to be more measured, more positive, or even reaching for higher forms of expression like poetry, you are actively practicing that control. You're cultivating consciousness over your own psychological state.
It's a choice you make in every single conversation.
Exactly. Which drives are you consciously choosing to feed?
Thank you for joining us for this analysis of human cognition. We hope you'll continue this reflection on your own.